Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this event for Webinars Now, and I'm really excited about this subject of disruptive product innovation and rapid iterative learning sprints with behavioral insights. I'm here with Mark Crowell speaking today, and Mark, I'll let you say a couple introductory remarks. We'll get going.
Great. Thank you so much, Dave. Well, it's an interesting time. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us for today's webinar at a very uncertain time when the term disruption certainly takes on a new meaning for all of us. Many of you are listening today from your home offices, not your workplace, and you're obviously on this call because innovation is important to you and your company. And you know, not to ignore the 800-pound elephant in the room, but disruption, the disruption we're going through right now is scary. It is risky for everybody, yet disruption carries with it the seeds of opportunity. Disruption causes behavioral changes and creates new consumer needs. So the current situation with COVID-19 is going to increase demand for immunity boosting products, as well as products that promote a general sense of health and well-being, balance, and in many cases, simply comfort, which is a major thing that food provides to all of us. So what we're presenting today is very relevant in today's environment of crisis. And not only is the focus on the techniques that provide behavioral insights in the CRAVES process important, but Dave and I will be talking about a process that is designed for speed. Many of you may be seeing a temporary suspension in your product development efforts during the crisis, but sure as we're on this call today, you all know that the need is going to be great to catch up with this lost development time once the PD wheels start turning again, and we're all going to be under pressure to get things into market and catch up with this time that we're losing now. So with that intro, we'll go ahead. Dave and I will introduce ourselves a little bit more formally to you. And Dave, you can advance the slide.
Yeah. So I'm Dave Lundahl. I'm the CEO for Insights Now upon the company. Insights Now, if you don't know who we are, I know some of you are new to this Webinars Now series, is we are a behavioral marketing research company who work a lot in this food industry, as well as other industries. And what is really different is our perspective on, consumers, changing the way you look at people, having sort of compassion and for what people are going through, really uncovers new insights into why products succeed. And we found that helps improve speed to market, success to market. Mark, any intros on your side?
I'm Mark Crowell. I'm the founder and CEO of Cullinex. We're a product development consultancy located here in Seattle, Washington. We specialize in clean label product development, and we're very proud to be teamed up with Dave and Insights Now.
Yeah, good. We're going to move on. Mark?
All righty. So we talk about disruptive categories, and we've got a few examples here for you. You can see on the left-hand side of this slide, paleo diets, plant-based milks, grain-free products, climatarians, upcycled ingredients, and veganism. Each of these categories is disrupting something. But on the ingredient level, paleo diets, for example, are disrupting flour, sugar, carbohydrates in general. And each one of these
disruptive categories has drivers. Now, question is, and these are just examples, when a disruptive category appears, what's driving it? It's not companies bringing new products into the marketplace that drives disruptive categories. Quite the opposite. It's consumer needs that are driving companies to create new products for those categories. And so, just if you could go back a slide, Dave, I did advance there a little prematurely.
Okay.
Those drivers are, for instance, in the paleo diet space, what we call diet tribes. These are people who have a like-minded goal for fitness or for weight loss or for energy, and they are forming up groups often on social media and sharing tips and preferred products and diet plans and so forth. So each of these disruptive categories has various kinds of drivers, which you can see listed under the driver column. And finally, what are the opportunities created by each of these disruptive categories? These disruptive categories change people's behaviors, their purchase patterns, and create opportunities for ingredients, create opportunities for companies with new products. And you can see some of those, for instance, in the paleo diet example, MCT, medium chain triglyceride oils, are heavily used in many paleo diets. Protein concentrates, trying to get protein levels up, sugar substitutes, trying to get carbohydrates down. You can see through that example, and I won't, there's a lot of information on this slide. I won't try to go through each one, but these are just some examples for you of how disruptive categories create things that are disrupted. They have drivers and they have opportunities they create for new ingredients and new products. All of that is important because as we talk later on in this presentation about behavioral insights, it's these behavioral insights that gain this understanding of categories and what is underlying these categories and driving consumer behavior. Very, very important to developing new products today. Please advance, Dave.
Yeah.
So disruptive category drivers, as I mentioned, are driven from consumer needs, and there are two major behavioral drivers to most disruptive categories that you'll look at in the market today. One is consumer desires to seek improved health and wellness, underlies a whole host of product categories. And, this would include things like weight loss and improved athletic performance and some of the things we talked about earlier. And then concern for the environment and sustainability. This is driving a whole host of certifications and desire for doing things that are better for the planet, underlying most of the organic program, as well as restorative agriculture. Now, please advance. So we're fulfilling consumer needs, or needs are being fulfilled in these disruptive categories. What's the formula for innovation? What is it that has to change about the innovation process itself, enabling us to work in these disruptive categories? So first, you have to understand what underlies the disruptive category, as we saw on slide 3. What are those motivators? What are those drivers? What's being disrupted? Where are the opportunities? So that category deep dive, that ability to look at each individual disruptive category and really understand the mechanisms underlying it is very, very important before the product development process even gets started. Secondly, ingredient innovation. If you're looking to work in these disruptive categories, you have to have ingredient innovation. You have to have technology. So things like the Impossible Burger with a plant protein-based heme created a breakthrough product. I could look at many categories, cheeses based on non-dairy plant milks, and the unique types of fermentation required to create cashew cheese, as an example. These are ingredient innovations. Upcycled products like green banana flour that enables resistant starches to be included that are all natural. That's ingredient innovation. Third, culinary innovation. Culinary innovation has always been required, but when working in these disrupted categories, there isn't a lot of history about how to formulate these products, but staying true to the tenets of things that look great, taste great, smell great, have all the organoleptic requirements that people are looking for in foods, and are, in some cases, analogs. They need to be like the products that they're disrupting. Plant-based burgers is a prime example. Fourth, you have to be able to scale the process up. If you have a unique process that is not scalable, it's not commercializable, it's not going to lead to new products in the marketplace. And fifth, in many cases, a new go-to-market strategy is required to bring these disruptive products into the marketplace. People are not necessarily familiar with them. They're not familiar with the ingredients. They need to be educated. Please advance. So now we get to the heart of the matter. What is Craves? The subject of today's discussion. How does it work? What are the pieces and parts? And what the heck does it stand for? So Craves stands for Clean Label Research through Agile Evolutions into Stores. And you can well imagine that Dave and I needed a pithy acronym to replace that mouthful. And, you know, Craves is this 5-step process that is an end-to-end solution to rapid, agile, consumer behavior-driven product development. So we'll be walking through each of these phases with you as we go through the presentation today. And just as a quick overview, in phase 1, we're finding our focus, and this is really gaining those category insights we described a little bit earlier about drivers and motivations and opportunities in a particular category. And remember, or be aware that this is specific to a particular category. Every category is going to have different dynamics. Creating the concept is the second phase. This is really where the ideas are being generated with consumer input and validation. The third area is building the product prototypes, again, with consumer co-design techniques. Fourth is scaling the product in a pilot to be able to bring it to not full production, but bring it to a store test. And the last phase is a retail store test that allows the product to go live. People pay real money for it in a real retail environment, and you are able to get a quick read on what may need to be tweaked, or what the strengths and weaknesses are, or a whole host of marketing, packaging, claim, pricing strategies can be all tested out in the retail store test. So why Craves? What's different about Craves? What's unique about the Craves process? And by the way, look, even if you're not doing the Craves process, if this presentation can some way inform your product development process and make it better, that's great. So first, Craves is unique in that it's an end-to-end agile process. So think about, we started with category insights. We went all the way through product development, gaining insights from consumers throughout the process, and we ended in an actual store test. So it is one process that really spans the entire gamut of activities all the way to real store test. So secondly, this is different from a lot of the product development that we all have traditionally done. I've been doing it for 25 years. Much of the PD process doesn't have much in the way of consumer insights. During my time with the Olive Garden, we had a very active consumer insights group. We were part of Darden Restaurants, and we spent millions of dollars a year on consumer research, but it was not this kind of consumer research. Behavioral insights is a very particular kind of consumer research, and Dave is going to get into more detail there, but that is really baked into the Craves process and really makes it unique. And that consumer insight is different for every category. For each disrupted category, that consumer insight is customized. And the third thing that is really unique about the Craves process is the speed to market. Agile sprints are built into each of those 5 phases I showed you on the Craves process. So I'm going to turn it over to Dave now, and he's going to talk about behavioral insights, what they are, how they work, and how they are gotten in each disrupted category.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mark. So, behavioral insights are, as Mark said, a different type of research, and they're based on a new type of metric that we call a behavioral KPI and or a key performance indicator. And these are metrics that help in predicting brand choice. They are your design criteria that impact brand choice. So different KPIs are associated with specific design criteria, such as your claims. It could be your brand. It could be the individual ingredients. It could be how you design your packaging. It could be also metrics about the sensorial experience, of the product and what it delivers. So these different, they're KPIs specific. These measures are it's relative to the competitive products, so you can actually measure how a product as a whole competes against the competition in a category. And these metrics do predict brand performance. So, for example, we are going to go through a category that I think many people have been very interested in, and is really a perfect example, and that's the plant-based burger category and a case study. So what we did here in this specific study is we took 14 different brands and the specific SKUs for these brands, and we looked at all of these, and we found there are 193 different ingredients. There were 29 claims over these different brands. We looked at the ingredient statements. We also looked at consumer measures such as awareness and trial. And we developed from this a bunch of behavioral KPIs, and I'll show you specific ones here in a minute. And we also, in the same study, went out and for each of these different brands, we had people do choice exercises. And these are target consumers, and we asked them, we gave them pictures like Boca with the ingredient statement, what the claims were, and we had to evaluate 3 at a time, multiple sets of 3 at a time. And each set, they said, which is the most appealing and which is the least appealing, which gets you a ranking. And from that, we're able to really get metrics, KPIs of brand choice, so you can really look at the relative performance against the competition. And most importantly, you can create a weighted measurement to predict brand choice based on all the behavioral KPIs. So for these different KPIs, these are metrics based on these, for instance, for claims and positioning. Instead of just asking people whether this claim is important to you, or directly saying would it influence you, we rapidly, these are all the claims, 29 claims across this category, we ask using something called an implicit explicit test. And we provide this and say, gluten-free, is this important to you? Yes or no? Is this influence? Yes or no? And in rapid fashion, go through free soy, high protein, good source of fiber, whatever. And from that, we're able to generate new gauges of new types of metrics. We're also able to look at emotional impact. So if a claim is going to be disruptive, it needs to elicit hope, intrigue, and desire. These are anticipation emotions, and we have a methodology for that also uses an implicit explicit test to gauge how much hope, fear, intrigue, and desire come from these. And we also can look at relevance as another element, another type of KPI, in very rapid fashion. How fast is this relevant and irrelevant? So if somebody takes a long time for a specific claim to respond, we know that it has disrupted them, especially if it's relevant. If it's relevant, it's a positive disruptor that takes a long time. So anyways, so these are metrics that we can look at. We can measure not only how fast, utilizing how fast people respond, whether they're using a slow sort of response or very quickly responding. And we could build into these metrics that are very important in looking at, important. So what you can do is in these category baseline studies is that you can actually look at models and model these KPIs against choice. So here you can look at brand awareness for the plant-based burgers category is the most important driver of choice. So brands that tend to have high degree awareness tend to get chosen more frequently. Brands that are trusted have a high degree of trust. So we have a KPI for trust. Second, having clean label. There's ingredients that are clean and so on and so forth is next. So we're finding that these sort of models, which are behavioral based models, tend to have high degree of predictive ability to look at. So you can use these models, this sort of importance, to determine which levers to pull to improve brand choice through your product development process and marketing process. Now, if you look at what Mark showed as his sort of CRAVES process, end-to-end behavioral insights, rapid iterative, speed to market. At the very beginning of these rapid iterative learning curves, so if you're developing concepts, you're building your product, prototyping, at the very beginning of these, you can actually use this estimation of which levers to move as a way to estimate where you're going to get lift. Where can you improve from a baseline? So for instance, if you were to reformulate, a plant-based burger product, you could estimate you're going to get 11% lift in terms of getting more choice against a category by reformulating to, let's say, take a specific ingredient like a sweetener or a starch or a protein and substitute it something that will be perceived to be more clean label. And then at the back end of each of these iterative learning sprints, you can use lift as a way to determine whether you actually move the dial. So at the end of a concept, you can do concept testing or home use testing or even in-store retail testing where people take product home and we can actually measure lift there. So as an example, for instance, on a home use test, you create a baseline before people try products. And here you see for the plant-based burger, Dr. Praeger's scores the highest in terms of choice, and Beyond Burger scores lower. And you can see that what we found is that in a home use testing situation where people are assessing Beyond Burger, that you get after they try the product, they get tremendous lift. They're basically going to the most chosen product in the category. So lift is really basically looking at baselines of choice and comparing it before versus after trial. And you find that as an example in the plant-based burger category, if you look at the average of what people's normal products are, when they look at the lift you get after trying your regular products, it's only about 8% lift, whereas, for instance, Beyond Burger, after they try the product, it increases by 46% lift, which is tremendous amount, which shows that this is a very disruptive product into the marketplace, disrupting this disruptive category.
Now, just to be clear, Dave, there was no change in the Beyond Burger product. They simply got a baseline score from the research pre-trial, and then you had people taste the product post-trial. And
right.
Beyond Burger obviously was a much more appealing product than people thought it was going to be. And they saw that 38% lift, essentially bringing Beyond Burger to the top of the category. But if it was somebody that was reformulating one of the other products in the category, let's say somebody in the audience was representing one of the other products and they wanted to tweak it and they wanted to get a better score, they could do that through the process by tweaking the behavioral KPIs, and then they could do a test, right? They could validate at the end and see what kind of lift they got from playing with the various behavioral KPIs, including reformulation of the product itself.
Exactly. So with the reformulating, if it's a product development initiative or if it's a marketing initiative, we have behavioral KPIs built into these KPIs, so you can actually determine, you can estimate, what do you want to do? Where are the levers you would want to strategically pull at the beginning of a learning sprint, and then make your changes and then test it out at the very end, utilizing lift metrics as well.
So you really have a lot more levers here as a product developer than, in the typical product development process. Let's change the formula, let's change the look of the product. But these behavioral KPIs are a much wider sort of set of levers to move, aren't they?
Yes. So for instance, if you're a product developer, we have literally hundreds of thousands of measurements on, literally several hundred different ingredients, and to know what the clean label reaction is from consumers. And we're able to then, by scoring all these different ingredients, you can look at, for instance, if you were, let's say you had a product that had an artificial ingredient, let's say an artificial sweetener in it, and you want to substitute it, what would you substitute it with? And you can actually look at other ingredients, maybe stevia or something else that you can find that has a much higher score, is perceived to be a much higher clean label. We found that we can actually then predict the lift from those product development strategies, utilizing these KPIs.
So you could try many, many different strategies without even getting on the bench.
Correct. And then try it, and then you can, assess it later on at the back end of your learning sprint. Okay, Mark.
Great. So to recap, let's just continue on with the plant-based burger category deep dive. And remember, you would do a different deep dive, different insights, different ingredients for every disrupted category. And even the KPIs, the relative importance of them would change. So this is customized information for each disrupted category. But first, to sort of recap the process, you're going to find your focus. How long does it take? Generally just 1 to 2 weeks, and you can create the baseline information needed with each of these disrupted categories to get customized insight into the drivers, what's being disrupted, and where the opportunities are. During this time, on the PD side, we're doing a technical review of how are products in a particular category formulated, what are the unit operations taking place in the plant, and so forth. Second step in the process, creating concepts, generally in the 3 to 4 week range to do sprint number 2. This is where co-creation takes place. That's creating concepts and getting feedback from consumers, getting those deep insights into what sort of the hopes and fears are of consumers with products in a particular category. Doing concept validation, understanding how concepts might be tweaked in terms of the wording, in terms of ingredients, and so forth, to provide lift, as Dave so well explained here in the last few slides. And then in step 3, creating actual prototypes on the bench. That generally takes, in sprint 3, 8 to 12 weeks or so, and that includes commercial ingredient sourcing, prototype development, and co-design or home use testing of prototypes. In total, 12 to 18 weeks for the first 3 steps in the CRAVES process. As Dave advances to the next slide, we'll see the last 2 sections, the scale up. This is small pilot runs of what we would call gold standard product that now has a full consumer insight in behavioral insights. That specification development, this is commercially saleable product. These are small production runs. It takes about 4 to 6 weeks to set that up. And then if in-store testing, that's the store, the S on the end of CRAVES, if that in-store testing is going to take place, it can happen a few different ways. It can happen in an actual live retail environment. We have a partner who has relationships with a couple of dozen major retailers around the country, so multi-market tests can also be executed. Or, if a situation like today's COVID-19 pandemic is happening, in-store tests may not be the best way to go. We can do in-home home use testing with consumers and ship product directly to them for feedback. So in total here, we have 8 to 18 weeks for these last 2 steps and 5 to 8 months for the entire process from the very beginning to an in-store test. Dave?
Yep. Yeah, so now it's kind of your turn. We would like to have an opportunity to address any questions. There is here kind of on the side of everybody's GoToWebinar dashboard. You can type in some questions which we'll address. And Mark and I are going to go through while you're thinking about your questions and entering them, Mark and I are going to say a few sort of summary sort of comments, and then we'll get to answering your questions. So first of all, it's obviously that disruption is certainly the new normal today. Whether we're dealing with opportunities associated with these disruptive categories, or and disrupted consumers, or our own disruptions in our development processes as a result of what we're facing today with coronavirus. But for this reason, as Mark pointed out, agile processes such as CRAVES, which we've presented here, which are comprised of these iterative learning sprints, are really becoming a best practice for more rapidly and cost effectively bringing new improved products to market. However, what we're trying to impress today, and I hope that you could take this as a takeaway, in order to achieve the in-market successes that are promised from Agile, whether you're a culinologist or a member of an innovation team, whether you're a marketer, product developer alike, you need to access new sort of behavioral-based metrics if you really want to be successful. These sort of behavioral KPIs that we presented really help you get those behavioral insights that can inspire at the front of these learning sprints. And at the back end, you can utilize them as validation metrics to be able to show whether your decisions you made are actually panning out as you hoped. And then they become, the information, the learnings that you can use into the next sprint to further inspire your actions and so on and so forth. Anything you want to add, Mark?
I think you covered it very well, Dave. These are tools that enhance and speed up the product development process in ways that were not available a few years ago before the advent of behavioral approaches to understanding consumers and the ability to reach people online the way we can now.
Right. Okay. So let's go on. So questions. Is this make sense? Is there confusion about any of the points that we've presented? What would you like to learn more in terms of any sort of additional? Okay, here's one question. Say we identify an area for product improvement in a category and make adjustments to gain lift. Is there a way to know if those changes can lose category share in another area of the product? For example, if I improve a product to make it more clean label by reformulating with a more clean ingredients, but that reformulation causes a loss in another area, such as the taste or look, is there a way to make sure that we gain lift without sacrificing? So I guess this is kind of talking about trade-offs that consumers make.
Question.
It's a great question, and thank you for the person that submitted that. We've found that consumers do make trade-offs dependent on the context, what the product is. So if you are formulating something for more clean label, it may not be as important in a situation for, let's say, a convenience product. But if it's a health and wellness product, absolutely. So as we showed in the example for plant-based burger, where awareness is number one, trust is number two, having a clean label is number three in terms of importance. Another category may have a different set of relative importance. For clean label may be more important or less, as an example. So I guess that's why that type of research that we do in a category deep dive is so important, because it helps focus product development and design sort of sprints, helps focus marketing sprints to determine how best to basically create lift.
And let me add to this, more specifically from the perspective of a product developer. Let's say I'm using the Craves tools and I'm making improvements to the ingredient deck, and I get a certain score after I make those improvements. Let's say it's 5% better because I've swapped out one ingredient for another ingredient, but maybe it's caused the product to actually not taste as good, not look as good. So there's a trade-off there. How do I measure that? Well, in the Craves process, you can measure it. You can get an overall score from things that you do pre-tasting or testing, sort of on a prospective basis, and then put the product into a home use test or into some sort of a taste test panel, and you can get feedback on that product, and you can see is there lift versus other products in the category from the reformulation, or did something move in one direction on ingredients, cancel something else out on the flavor side of things. And you can get that information, very specific information, in the Craves process. Obviously, the ability to test many things virtually and get prospective scores for them before you put them into expensive market tests is a real advantage here.
Right. We're just scratching the surface in terms of introducing, this approach and methodology, and we are finding tremendous success in taking products to market through this process, whether it's working at helping companies with one specific sprint, or stringing them together as we've shown throughout the whole Craves process, end to end. You can just you gain so much more value when you have baselines and KPIs that can help guide and confirm, validate what you're doing. So I think that's I don't think there's any other questions that I see right now coming in. Any final comments, Mark, before we sign off?
Well, I want to thank everybody for joining today. We understand what's going on for all of us, and really appreciate you taking the time to listen in today. And we hope that if you have a need, an opportunity, we would love to hear from you, and we'd certainly look forward to speaking with you.
Yeah. Same here. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Now, if you have been any other webinars, we've got the next 4 scheduled here. We're doing a couple every month right now. Our next webinar will be on April the 9th, and we'll have a guest from Tyson. We're working on a specific project that they are excited to form. It was going to be presented at a conference that got canceled, so we're taking a lot of conference types of talks, and that I think are really exciting that people can't get, and we're putting them in part of our webinars. In April the 16th, we got we're actually doing some research right now that's looking really exciting in terms of insights, but it's about clean label behavior and trade-offs that consumers are making in response to the coronavirus outbreak. And so that's going to be on the 16th. And we'll have some more in May, something about going online for those of you who are more insights folks. And then Mark and I will be coming back in May 14th with part 2 of this sort of looking at new formula for disruptive product innovation. We'll probably change the title a bit, but that's part 2 in this series will be in May. So thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.